Hey, what's going on, everyone? It's Dominic, the Primetime Treasure Hunter. Thanks for coming by to check out another video. This video is designed as a follow-up to one that I had done recently. You may remember this from last week. It's called How to Fight a False Return on eBay and Not Pay Return Shipping if, and remember there was a big if on this one, if the person is trying to scam you, trying to pull one over on you. This is in situations where you offer a free return shipping to the person. And so if you remember the specifics of that situation, and if you didn't, I'll recap it for you, and I'll post a link to this video at the very end. That was a situation where someone was trying to get a return on a costume that I had sold them, and the person was claiming that the item was defective when it wasn't. They were claiming that there was something wrong with the zipper. I got it back. There was nothing wrong with the zipper. eBay had automatically approved the return. And so I had a decision to make once I received it. Do I just automatically approve the return or do I appeal it? I couldn't offer a partial refund because it wasn't damaged. I'm going to take you through a little bit more about this with one of eBay's policies and show you how something that's written on there is not exactly correct and could really trip you up if you're going through trying to figure this out when somebody sends you back something that's claimed to be item that is described when it's really a buyer's remorse. That's what happened in that situation. And it's also something that happened in another situation with me this week, but I'm going to show you how I handled that one a little bit differently and got actually a quicker resolution to a very similar type of situation. Now, to go back to this video right here, this one in the gray here, what had happened was that I had appealed eBay's decision to side with the buyer. And so they basically held up their decision, even though the buyer only had 9 feedbacks and I have over 2,000. I've been selling on eBay since 2000, but they decided to, stick with their original decision. And so I was out $9 in that situation for the return shipping label on the costume. So what I decided to do, rather than calling them at that point, once I made the appeal, because I mentioned in that video, that's a waste of time. If you've appealed it, don't bother calling them because you will get nowhere with that. However, there is a way that you can call them and get a reversal, and that's what I'm going to talk about with you today, if you handle it a little bit differently. So I want you to know kind of different tools you could have in your arsenal to deal with this type of situation when someone's trying to use item not as described in place of what really is a buyer's remorse situation. So in that situation, on the prior video, I had relisted the costume. I just did sell similar on it. Someone else purchased it for a similar price. They received it and they gave me positive feedback on it. And I used that as proof slash evidence to then call eBay, and then they reversed their decision and I wound up getting the credit for the $9 for the item. But let me show you a similar type of return, but how it was handled a little bit differently by me this week. And again, how I got quicker resolution by not actually doing an appeal through eBay's system, through their computer system. I just did this by the phone. So let me show you what happened here. Now, of all things for me to get a return on was a comic book, which again, I've told you before, I rarely get returns, and here we got 2 in 1 week. So it's kind of Murphy's Law, when it rains, it pours kind of thing. So this book I had actually shown on Instagram, and I had shown it in one of my haul videos when I go through items that sell during the day. This is X-Men number 107. It's Starjammers issue. It's got the first appearance of Gladiator. It's in fine to very fine condition, so there are some acknowledged flaws with it. But what's not on it is a water stain, and that's what the buyer claimed was on there here. You could see here it says does not match description or photos. Hello, comic has water damage and stain as shown. This wasn't disclosed in the description. Please expedite the return label. Thanks. Now, this is something I cropped out because I didn't want the buyer's username to show up, and I also didn't want my address to show up, which is below this if I brought up the actual eBay screen. But the thing I'm going to tell you about this, and you just have to trust me on this one, but there were no photos attached, which is very unusual for a return. You are supposed to attach photos to provide evidence that there's something wrong with the item, and there wasn't any attached. And so that kind of, I think, kind of goes to show some of the automation that sometimes happens with eBay, because there was no one that seemed to be checking this over. The person's claiming there's photos, there's no photos. They automatically approve the return. So I had no say in it. It gets sent back to me, and I'm out the shipping label fee. Now, it's not a lot. It's one comic book, so it's several dollars, but it's the principle of it to me. When somebody is sending me something back and there's actually nothing wrong with it. It's a buyer's remorse. It's a $90 comic book. That's actually what it's sold for. It's a lot of money to spend on a comic book. And if the person changes their mind, you never know what happens behind the scenes. They could be, and trust me, in the comic book industry and the collecting industry, there's lots of guys that go out and they buy something expensive, a $90 comic, a $90 Funko Pop, and then they tell their significant other about it. And the significant other says, "Are you crazy? You better send that back." So people will make up that there's something wrong with it when there really isn't. And sometimes that's because they think, and they may be used to Amazon, for example, that that's the thing that they have to do, so they don't have to pay the return shipping label fee back, even though it does say that I will pay for return shipping. They may think that they have to make up that there's something wrong with it. And the reason I'm going to tell you that there was nothing wrong with it is, first of all, number one, comics are my specialty area. I know how to grade them. Though I'm not a professional grader, but I've been dealing with comic books ever since I was 8 years old. So I know comics, again, know how to grade them. And I look them over very thoroughly before I list them, and I describe any and all flaws. And so there simply was not a water stain on it. It would be something I would have noted. I would have mentioned it, and I might not even have listed it if it was a bad enough water stain. I just would have given it to Mrs. Primetime, my wife, to use for like an art project or something like that, if it was that bad of a stain. So I get it back, comes in the mail, and I open it up, and it's in the original cardboard, the original tape that I had around it to protect it from coming out, and literally no sign that the tape had been cut, opened, anything. There was absolutely no sign it had ever even been opened. And so once I saw that, I was extra suspicious. So I just kind of carefully opened it up. I took it out, looked at it, and just as I remembered it, there's absolutely nothing wrong with the book. There's no water stain anywhere. There's nothing wrong beyond what I had already disclosed. And, the problem here is that the person is using a false item not as described. You see here where it says doesn't match description or photos. That is the worst type of return to get. It's bad for your seller reputation if that stuff stands and it's not justified. Now eBay will give you some grace. If it happens once in a while, you make a mistake, okay. But if it's not justified, that's where I say you need to fight back and you have to stand up for yourself in this situation. And what I really want you to take from this video is that when you go to process the return, because eBay is going to say, okay, what do you want to do here? You want to just issue the refund? Do you want to give a partial refund, which you could only do if the item is damaged or received back in a condition that you did not send it? But here we have a different situation. In this situation, we have that the item came back in the same exact way that I had sent it. So if we scroll up here, we're going to look about partial refund guidelines when the item is returned as user damage, right? So it says, in most cases, you'll issue a full return to the buyer. But if the item is returned, used, or damaged, it may be appropriate to offer a partial refund. And you could do this up to 50%, okay, to try to recoup some of the value. But what if, again, you get it back in the same condition? Now look at this. It says misuse of this feature. This is very important to pay attention to. This feature is an incentive for you to provide buyers with exceptional experience, such as offering free returns. This feature, the partial refund guidelines, this feature may not be used to recoup market losses on items in the same condition or recoup return shipping and restocking fees. I'm going to read that again because this is so important, okay? This feature may not be used to recoup market losses on items returned in the same condition, which is exactly what happened to me, or recoup return shipping, which is what I would want to do since there's nothing wrong with the item as the person claimed, and restocking fees. It may only be used to recoup losses when an item is returned, used, or damaged. Now, even more important, which would scare you away from doing a partial refund in this situation, sellers who misuse this feature may be subject to a range of actions, such as losing access to this feature or other site features, or losing seller protections. Now, here's the problem with this, okay? This, what is listed right here, is not completely accurate. Okay, so let's go over to another page that talks about seller protections and how things have changed as of October 1st. So we're just into October. So things need to be updated on this page and redirected over here more clearly to point to exceptions. Okay, so here we go. A buyer falsely claims that an item was not as described. So this is a newer type of caveat situation. So it says, if the report qualifies, we will subsidize the return shipping label cost up to $6 per return for any false claim filed by a buyer that an item was not as described. Okay, well, first of all, that's $6. That's not even completely true, because in the prior situation, you remember I showed you, I actually got back $9. I got back the full amount of the shipping. So if you fight and you have good enough evidence, they will sometimes go over to $6. So don't always think that you're just limited to the $6. But this is basically telling you something that is opposite of what it's saying over here. And I confirmed that when I called eBay, because this is a situation where I called eBay, because what I did is I actually just processed the refund. Okay, so I didn't appeal it. I just processed it. And I processed it because of what it said here. But it just bothered me that this was going to go on my record as an item that was described, that I decided to call eBay, and I wanted to get things on the record that this was not truly an item that is described case. So when I called them and I talked to them on the phone about this, they said, well, you could offer a 50% partial refund. And I said, well, actually, no, I can't, because the item was sent back in the same condition. And I read this exact thing to the eBay representative. And they said, well, that's not actually true. There's an exception to it. And then we started talking about this over here. So I said, okay, so there's an exception, and I basically have to call in to get the exception. And that's what the person said is, yes, call in. And as I did, I explained what happened. And this is where your reputation comes into play, because when it says if the report qualifies, because now I'm calling them and I'm saying, well, the item is not what the person is saying. The person's saying it's damaged, it's fine. So how do they know that it's fine? Well, they could have asked me to send pictures of it, but they didn't ask me to do that. Really what it comes down to is your reputation. And that's why honesty on eBay is so important. So if someone truly does send you back something that's really just a buyer's remorse, and they're not trying to pull a scam on you, then you need to honor what your service agreement is. Okay. If you messed up, you need to provide a refund, or you need to cover the return shipping label fee if that's part of your agreement. Like, you can't be dishonest and try to get out of your agreement if the person is legitimately holding you to what your service agreement says. But again, this video and the prior video is what to do in a situation where you are putting out a service agreement out there, but a person is trying to take advantage of you in a way that's not proper by claiming things are damaged when they're really not. So you could see here, if you have things like operating with a false identity, which most people won't do who are watching this video, but not following through on your service policy, like if you have a record of not honoring your return policy, if you have a history of serious policy violations, selling fakes, using prohibited forms, drop shipping, taking sales off of eBay to avoid fees, all these types of things, when you call in with a legit complaint like I have, they're not going to help you out. Okay. you will get help if you build up, I used this term last time, if you build up political capital with them and you have a reputation that you are a good seller. These are the situations where when you talk to a real human that they can help you out. Yeah, things might go against you when you're dealing with, automated returns and automated appeals and how they decide this thing. Because you got to remember, they're getting hundreds, thousands, of these things a day. Probably. So they got a lot to deal with. They probably don't put, eyes on every single one of these situations. So what happened is right here, I explained the situation. And here we go. I got the refund of $320. Now, I know what I'm going to hear probably from some people. This is a waste of time. You did all this for $3.20. First of all, the conversation on the phone was all about 5 minutes. So, but it wasn't about the money per se. It's really more about the principle of it. And it's also about that I just don't want item not as described returns listed on my account when that's not really what the true situation is. So two different ways to handle it. This is one way. You can just process the return, and you can just call them up if you didn't try to do any type of appeal via the computer, and you could just get the refund this way. So be aware of this new change as of October. And this is just basically I'm giving you a real life example of something that has just happened once this went into effect, of how it actually did work, and it helped me out. I have nothing but positive things to say about eBay's customer service when I call them on the phone to deal with this situation. And again, I'm not going to recap it again, but then there's how I handled this situation in the last video, which again, I'm going to post at the end. So I hope that this is helpful to you in dealing with these types of frustrating fake item not as returned claims that are truly buyer's remorse. And so now you have two ways to handle this situation so you don't have to pay that return shipping label fee. But remember, if you really do need to pay it, very important, pay it, because if eBay sees that you're trying to claim that every single one of these coming back is fake, that's going to lead to some suspicions on their end that you might be trying to pull one over on them, and you don't want that. So just make sure, again, guiding policy to everything that you do with your online business is be honest. Number one, that's the number one thing. If you do that, you're going to be in good shape. So I hope the video helped. Like I said, if it did, make sure that you hit the like button and subscribe. Make sure, by the way, a special announcement that you come by Friday night, October 18th at Don the Auction Professor's channel. We are going to do a video talking about different places that you could go and source. We'll talk about traditional places, and we'll also talk about non-traditional sourcing venues. If you wind up watching this video after October 18th, just go over to Don the Auction Professor's channel. You can see it. It's right here on my sidebar. There he is, Don the Auction Professor. Go over there, check it out, and check out all his other videos. His content is absolutely incredible. The guy has jumped up from 10,000 to 15,000 subs in like a matter of less than a month, I think. It's just amazing. So many educational videos over there. You will definitely learn a lot. So go check out Don for sure. Check out my other video content. I've got playlists with almost 500 videos at this point. All free, all designed to help you in your reselling business. So make sure also you come to the Facebook group, the Facebook Reselling Resource Center. We had our monthly Sellers Supporting Seller-thon today. We generated tons of sales for the sellers in the group, over 12,000 members there. Come by to my Facebook group and also make sure you come over to the Instagram account. That's at prime_time_treasure. I put a funny video up last night with me showing an old vintage phone that Mrs. Primetime purchased for $10. We currently have it listed for $200 on eBay. I'm not sure what we'll get for it, but it's a pretty cool piece, and I did a little comedic video about it. So go over there. I put some content on there that I don't always show here. So I like to just put some exclusive stuff over there once in a while. So again, I hope to see you tomorrow at Don's show, and make sure you come by, drop a comment in the chat, drop a comment in the comment section over here, and I look forward to seeing you all again soon. Thanks a lot, everybody. Bye-bye.